Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at 3 two-player only games, and spoiler alert, all these games are fantastic and I'm excited to talk to you about them. But before I get started on the game reviews, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer when it comes to purchasing board games here in the UK. And if you use my link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. Okay, so I'm going to start here with probably the lesser known game out of the 3. This is District Noir, also known as Throne and Grail. So this is a small box card game that takes around 15 minutes to play, and it's a kind of simple set collection game, as in that deck of cards you have 5 5s, you have 6 6s, 7 7s and 8 8s. You also have some additional cards which are kind of straight up points or negative points, and you also have these 3 locations, and if you win these locations, if you have all 3 of those locations, you will immediately win the game. So it has this kind of sudden death winning criteria as well as the point scoring. And the idea is if you have the majority of any of these sets, then you'll score points equal to the amount of numbers on them. So if I had, say, 5 out of the 8 8s, that's going to be 5 8s for 40 points, for example. And the way this game works is really interesting, because all you can do on your turn is you can either play a card onto the existing row, or you can take the last 5 cards which have been played onto that row. And what that means is that if you know that your opponent might want a certain type of card, on your turn, you can maybe play a negative one to force them picking up that one as well as the one they actually wanted. There's some cool mind games here as well, as you can maybe start getting rid of all your rubbish cards, maybe force your opponent to pick up something he wanted, and then you've got the rest of your good cards in your hand, then you keep playing them and then pick them up for yourself. You always have to have the sudden death winning condition in the back of your mind, because if your opponent has 2 out of the 3 of them, then you want to be making sure that you definitely guarantee yourself the 3rd one or lose immediately. And of course your opponent is going to use that against you by forcing you to pick up loads of negative points along with that location card. Really cool concept there, some cool mind games, and very, very succinct. You were talking 15 minutes here. And because you know with a good degree of predictability what's in the deck, it means in the later rounds in the game, you can quite confidently deduce what is in your opponent's hand. If you've not seen all the 8 cards yet, they've probably got a good hand of 8s there, which might mean you can sit back, force your opponent to play them, and then pick them up for yourself. Really neat little game here, clever little design, very simple rules overhead, and I highly recommend this little game here. And if you play this one regularly with the same player, the experience actually becomes a bit richer and a bit more tactical, and it becomes a bit more of a mind games style of experience, I suppose. So I really like this one, definitely underrated. It hasn't really blown up in terms of popularity or anything, but it should do, because it's a really nice game, very clever, but still very simple. So that is District Noir. Next up we have Trambahn. Now this one is a touch heavier than something like District Noir, and you're looking at around half an hour to play this one. Now this is another card-driven game though, and it has a multi-use card function, as you have a hand of cards here which come in 3 different colours. But these cards also are used as your currency in the game, because on the reverse side you have they're all worth 1,000, whatever it is, pounds each. And each round you are forced to play one of these cards in these rows, and as soon as there are 4 of a certain, I think they're called passengers, on one of those rows, then that colour will cash out. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to create runs of these cards. You're starting from low and going to high. And the longer these runs you make, the more points you're going to get, of course, when it comes to those things cashing out. But it means that if you keep building and building and building your rows, they're probably not going in the passenger row, so they're not going to cash out for a long time. And also, in order to build those rows in the first place, you have to invest in these stations, which can become quite costly, especially as the game develops, as they get more and more expensive. And you have to be very careful and meticulous about which cards you are willing to hold back into your hand, because that's clogging up space that you could be used to generate money. Because at the end of the round, you always have the option to discard your hand and create it or turn it into money. And the slower you do that, it means that you're going to spend a lot more time to actually get what you want achieved. I love the kind of pacing of this game. As say one person might really focus on blue cards and try to keep on cashing out those blues time and time again before your opponent even gets a run of blues going. And because the game ends here as soon as I think it's 10 stations have been cashed out, it means that you can be really caught off guard if you start dragging your heels. So you really do have to always be aware of what your opponent is doing, and sometimes even try piggyback off what they're doing and hopefully overtake them so that you don't fall too far behind. A very clever game. It has some similarities to a classic like Lost Cities, where you are trying to create those runs of cards. But I think the additional touches here, such as that pacing and the way the cards score, makes it feel different enough to warrant owning both. Now, I think this is sadly out of print. You may be able to find a copy out there on the second-hand market. And if you like your two-player games and you want a solid two-player game collection with some meat on the bones here, Trambahn is a great option. Really like this one. Very cool decisions. That is Trambahn. And the final game I'm talking about today is Seven Wonders Duel by Antoine Bowser and Bruno Cathala. This is a 30-minute drafting, almost like a tableau building style game based on the original Seven Wonders, which was another drafting game. But this one, the drafting mechanism is really cool, as you have this almost like a pyramid of cards at any time. And depending on which ones are exposed on the kind of extremities of that pyramid are the ones available to you. And these cards are going to do a bunch of different things, such as giving you resources, which will give you the ability to buy better cards in the future. They'll give you straight up victory points. They give you military points, which will kind of work on this push and pull kind of tug of war system, where the more military points you get, you can start putting pressure on your opponent, force them to discard money, or even win instantly if you push it far enough. You're also trying to collect these science symbols, which is another kind of sudden death winning condition. And I love the way that no matter what you do in this game, you are always laying something on the table for your opponent. It's sometimes taking the best of several bad options, because you might be getting something good, but your opponent might be getting something better. And because you can kind of foresee what's going to come up on those drafting rows, well, some of them are face up and some of them are face down. But because sometimes you have great cards tucked behind the cards you want, it might make you think twice about your plan A. What a wonderful little game this is. I mean, it is so smooth and interesting, and probably one of the richest games that I have in terms of falling in to a 30-minute time category. It is an absolute masterpiece of a two-player game. And I think it is pretty much as good as a two-player game can be. And I know this game is already highly revered. It's rated extremely well amongst most board gamers, to be honest. And I tend to have a bit of a maybe a slightly different approach to board gaming than most people do. I tend to like more dry Euro-style games, and I still love this one. I think it is so well designed and an objectively great game. Now, I have actually played this one with one of the expansions, which is called the Pantheon expansion, which adds in some god powers and things like that. And I think actually that detracts from the game. I think I am in a massive minority by saying that, because I know it's a very highly rated expansion, but I think it adds a bit too much and it kind of takes away from the core experience. But yeah, I mean, if you like unique powers and things like that Bruno Cathala tends to add into his games, then that's really a good option to go for, because it adds that's more for you to play with, adds a bit more variability. But yeah, the progress in this game is great as you play through 3 ages. Each one becomes more interesting than the last. The first stage is basically building up a foundation of resources, and in the last phase the last age, you are really harnessing, getting those big points grabs and trying to edge your opponent out that way. But yeah, a wonderful tense game. I can't really criticize anything about it, because I think it is that good, and definitely deserves all the hype it's received over the years. A fantastic game. That is Seven Wonders Duel. So that concludes the video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, talking about these 3 fantastic two-player games. If you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye-bye.